Let's call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. Gary, would you like to lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hopefully a short agenda tonight be a good thing. Beth informed us this is the longest day of the year, so
Well, then we've got plenty of time.
we've got lots of time. So, I don't see Mr. Higginbotham here tonight. Is
He
he not here?
is not here
Okay.
today.
So you, your
Look
name's
on
right
the
there.
agenda. It actually
Project-
has my name on that one.
Project updates.
So we have been busy working on projects. We're making progress. Tomorrow is a walkthrough with the punch list on the jail, for the jail bond projects that go back 2 years. So we're wrapping that up. I'll direct your attention to the things that are highlighted in yellow here are new since you saw this last. We've now paid $437,000 on the exterior stonework project at the courthouse. Still $1.4 million to go. The annex generator, the final amount there is $307,000. We continue to work on that. You've approved the funding. The contract is being prepared. Remember that there's going to be a significant amount of lead time on ordering that generator unit, but we're moving forward on that. Courthouse bathrooms are moving far slower than I'm sure everybody who works in the courthouse would like. They did run into some problems on the locations of the water piping, so they've had to do a few workarounds. They haven't been able to sequence the work on the bathrooms in the order that they had intended. So the bathrooms on the second floor are going to be closed longer than we had anticipated, but we've now spent $307,000 on that project, so we're past the halfway point. I don't know honestly whether that means we're past the halfway point in terms of time on the project, but in terms of the financials. So the total amount spent on the $3.5 million roughly for those capital projects is 1.3, almost 1.4 million. About 2 million still left to be spent, but we are making significant progress. Down in the middle of the page, the fairgrounds website, the fairgrounds marketing coordinator has begun work. I think you met her at your last meeting, and she is very familiar with creating websites and is working on that as one of her first projects, so that is going well. I think Steve said he hoped to have her come in and show us the website at the July meeting. So we're working towards that. Then the emergency management ramp. Remember the old carpet is going to come out. We're going to do the acrylic coating there, and that is scheduled to begin on August 14th. It should take about a week to do that. It needs some time to cure before people can walk on it, so they'll be using that outside entrance while that project is going on. The Coolman Center HVAC, which was going to be one of the projects we talked to you about funding, kind of took the matter into its own hands, as you'll recall, and the unit for the office area went out. So we went ahead and ordered an entire new unit. It was the compressor that went bad, but the whole unit needed to be replaced. It was original to the building, as are the two units that heat and cool the main exhibit area at Coolman. So that's going to be, to replace all three of those units, going to be $110,000. We saved a significant amount of money by doing all three of them instead of doing just one on an emergency basis and two when we got back around to it. So at least $10,000 in savings there. I think
Have
what
they fixed the one for the offices?
it is supposed to be fixed this week. I don't know. I haven't heard, and Steve was out today, so I didn't follow up
I
on
don't
whether
think they
that's
fixed
fixed.
it, they've got temporary
They do
ones in the,
They've placed portable units, 2 or 3 of them in the office area so that it's not too hot. And it's supposed to be done this week, whether it's today or tomorrow, I'm not sure. But they did provide those at no cost to us, so very helpful there. And have you heard any issues with those portable units?
no, I asked the other day and it was still like 85 in the
And they're-
office, so it was still quite warm, but it was
They
not.
certainly won't do the job that the big unit
But the
is
lobby,
designed
they
to
said,
do.
was cooler than the offices, so
Good.
that's the most important. This week at least during fair.
Right. So that's where we're at with the projects. 2.8 million remaining in committed funds on those projects. And we continue to work all of those projects. Questions? Okay. Ron, anything that you want to share from our conversations earlier today about the sale and what kind of changes we might want to look at?
There's obviously a problem with the procedures as it relates to the commissioner's sale. We'll just continue to look at rescheduling that, but in doing so, we're gonna create some fairly stiff conditions in our criteria for participation, including that, well, we've talked about several things, and conceptually, I think we have an idea. We wanna wait and see what the actual document might look like, but before we get a draft prepared, we want to at least run it by SRI, but we would plan to advertise in media but not through SRI, require some type of financial commitment for anybody who registers for a bid battle, and then require payment, basically strike all the items in the auction, adjourn for however long it takes, hopefully not too long, and collect payment immediately at that time. If payment isn't made, put that parcel
Come back
back
and resell it.
immediately and sell it,
To someone
that day.
else.
So that's commissioner sale, that's kinda easy. The tax sale, not so much, so we're just gonna have to wait and kinda see where the situation is by the time we're ready for, October something, 6th, 7th, something.
Yeah, the first week of October. Just so you understand, that, and I think you all are aware that we were only able to sell 2 of the 16 parcels that were in the commissioner's sale. There is a cost now associated with us owning those other 14 buildings. So we had them mowed for the first time over the weekend. The cost to get that done was $755. Some of these had weeds that were 3 or 4 feet tall, so the first time will be the costliest, and we're on a every 2-week schedule to keep them so that they're manageable and we don't get too many complaints. I talked to the mayor and the head of their enforcement group that looks at properties, and they know what the situation is, and they're working with us, and we don't anticipate any real problems, but there will be some cost as we work through this and turn around and finally get those properties back on the tax rolls as quickly as we can. So there are limitations in how quickly we can do it. Things have to be advertised a certain number of days and all of that, so it's likely to be a minimum of a month, maybe two. But we'll keep on top of that.
But the intent would be to have an actual sale, not an online sale. At least for the commissioner's sale, because several of the bidders that showed up that were legitimate bidders were frustrated by the way it went. A couple of them expressed their preference would be to have it a live sale with a live auction, but not have to participate online if we can get control of the situation.
Okay.
Ron, is there any way to prohibit a bidder from participating again that failed to financially pay?
Is there any way what?
Is there any way that you can prevent someone from participating in an auction that failed to follow through?
Not in that auction, but if they want to participate in any future auctions, certainly. But we don't have a database of anybody that, and other than the however many names we got this past one,
I
which,
think that's what you were asking,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dealing with future auctions.
well, I don't think we're gonna have anybody show up from places that those folks were to try to do it again. I'd be shocked. I mean, again, we don't intend to advertise the next sale on SRI, and that's how they've been pretty well monitoring their activities.
We'll see. We could be shocked. We were shocked last time, so, we knew something was gonna happen, but we didn't know what exactly, and so hopefully we live and learn.
And just a handful of bidders actually were the high bidder for properties.
Right, one person was the high bidder for like 6 of them.
I think they realized that we were getting their information, and so that there was a little nervousness, and
Right.
so they had one sacrificial.
So the other thing that I wanna do tonight is give us all a little update on HELP and ARPA in general. I talked to Ron and we're gonna consider this to be a draft information. Give me the legal term here, Ron.
Are we talking help?
We're talking, HELP first. And so you recall, we're putting together a plan. That plan is not finalized yet. It will go to Okra for vetting. And so we're not gonna share that publicly in any kind of written form at this point. What's the phrase?
Well,
It's
to the
a-
extent that there are documents, they are draft documents that are deliberative in nature and will be
So we're
a
still,
basis for future decision making. So at this point in time, they're not public. That obviously doesn't mean they won't ultimately become
they
public.
soon will be. They soon will be when we get information back from Okra. And ultimately, on every project that is part of the HELP plan, the elected officials for that particular community will make the decision. So anything that the county spends will have to be approved by commissioners and council, okay? Everything the city spends by council and the mayor and the town councils of the 6 towns that we're working with will have to approve those. The document that comes back to us and is shared publicly will have information about each project, how it came to be, how it evolved through the public input process, which of the committees looked at it and vetted that and elevated it to a project, and then how the core team took the projects that came through the 4 committees and made recommendations on which things should be funded. So I'm gonna walk you through where we're at with the county, and remember, these are recommendations from the core team. That team being made up of people from the county, people from all over the county, as well as people from each of the communities that participated, so the 6 towns and the city of Richmond. So if you recall, the requirement for us, 30% of our ARPA funds, was to commit roughly $3.8 million. We also committed $500,000 of county edit funds for that process. The EDC also committed $500,000 of consolidated edit funds, which in the normal course of things would also come back to us for final approval. It's not money that's appropriated at this point. So we'll need to weigh in on that. So most of these projects, there are four categories or four committees that reviewed different areas. Most of these projects ended up being promoted by more than one of the committees, and in particular, the Quality of Place Committee and the Economic Vitality Committee had the highest number of projects that came forward. The Health and Wellness Committee had one, and the Broadband Committee had four. So I'm gonna run down. There's 33 projects in total. There's 8 that are Wayne County projects. There are 8, 9 that are Richmond projects. There are 3 that are shared projects that are jointly funded between the city and the county. And then each of the 6 small towns, East Germantown, Economy, Spring Grove, Dublin, Milton, and Cambridge, have anywhere from 1 to 4 projects that they've identified. All of these, at some point, were identified as priority projects by the people that participated in face-to-face conversations that we held, or in surveys. So we had just over 300 people that participated in those face-to-face meetings. We had about 600 people that participated in surveys. All of that information was merged. We looked at what elements fit under each of those 4 committees. Then the committees, which had somewhere between 10 and 20 people, depending on the committee, reviewed those and created proposed projects from those. Keep in mind that what somebody said at a information meeting, one of the public input meetings, might be as simple as housing is an issue. And so the committees then took that information, looked at what seemed to be the most important, and then created projects that could be identifiable and could have a cost assigned to them. And those projects then went to the core team, which is kind of the steering committee. As I said, it's made up of people from all over the county, as well as people from specifically from each of the 6 towns in the city of Richmond. And so all of these committees then and the core team identified these projects and assigned funding to them, with the understanding that at least 30% of each community's ARPA funds had to be committed to a project that is approved to move forward. Approved is the wrong word. Recommended to go forward. Okay, because out of all that committee work, there are recommendations. Those recommendations will be vetted by Okra. Some projects will not be able to be funded by certain funding streams without Okra's approval. And then once we have that plan, all of those projects and the recommendations of how they're prioritized, how much money would be spent on each, it will come back to local elected officials to make the final decisions. So with that said, again, I apologize, but this is going to generate more questions than answers right now. Bear with me, because when we get the report back, it will have information about every project. These are not all projects that I am incredibly familiar with. I'm trying to give you the best kind of thumbnail sketch that I can, and we'll be back to you with more information. So for the county, a project that started out in conversation as creating places, which is an activity of the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. It's a matching grant program whereby a community can raise up to $50,000 in funds for a project that will create placemaking kinds of activities in their community. And if they raise as much money as they budget, then it'll be matched dollar for dollar by up to $50,000 from the state. So this is an opportunity for these towns to have a $100,000 project in their town without a significant investment of town resources. And it would work in this way. The recommendation is the county would commit $10,000 of ARPA funds to each of those projects. The EDC would commit $10,000 to each of those projects. The foundation would be asked to commit $10,000 to each of those projects. We would request additional funding from other sources, whether it's the two private entities that have already committed $100,000 each, or whether it's others that would be approached. And so for a town like Economy, for example, to have a $100,000 upgrade to their park and their playground in particular would be an enormous benefit to Economy, with 130, 150 residents of Economy. And it would be collaborative between the town and the township. The township actually owns the park that the town has proposed to upgrade. So there are actually 6 projects, which would be $60,000. There's also a recommendation that we work with each of the 5 school districts and do a very similar thing with high school students. All 5 of the school districts are interested. We're working through some of the details, but again, the commitment from the county would be up to $50,000, $10,000 for each school district, where the kids would actually make the decisions on what are kind of placemaking activities that make their town, their area more attractive to kids. What would make them want to stay, what would make them want to come back after they finish school. And so it seemed to us to be a novel approach to placemaking in Wayne County. The next project is radio towers. This has been an ongoing issue for 911 and the police and fire agencies for a number of years. As I've participated in ops board meetings, it has gone back probably at least 10, maybe 15 years of issues where there are dead zones in radio operation and cell phone operation. And so what we're proposing there is kind of a threefold project. Number one, we would spend up to $82,000 on a study that would quantify, map, if you will, where there's good radio coverage, where there's bad radio coverage that needs some improvement. And then what would be the things we could do that would improve improve that so that it would provide safe communication, reliable communication for the public safety staff, which also then in turn makes the community safer for residents. So that would be $81,000 that's proposed to come out of county edit. As we went through a recent audit, there was a page that highlighted how any real or perceived conflict of interest would not be able to use federal funds to do that project. And as I talked to Matthew about how we might address that situation and who we might get to look at, do the study, he of course recommended Ritter. I'm sorry, I forget what the middle S stands for. Ritter Strategic Services. Which I couldn't remember the middle S. So anyway, so we've made some accommodation there, and I don't know whether we'll end up using Barry's company for this or not, but it seemed prudent in the possibility that we would to fund that out of some funding stream other than federal dollars. So that's why you see that under county edit. So once that study would be done, then we have some guesses as to what might need to happen to improve radio service, and some of the estimates for that are in the $750,000 to $1.5 million range to put up new towers and equip those towers. So we have that as a recommendation. Going on down the list, supporting efforts to improve access to child care came up in both the health and wellness, well, all three, health and wellness, the economic vitality, and the quality of place committees. And so that is recommended to be funded at $300,000 to improve access to child care for folks in Wayne County. Senior housing infrastructure for market rate apartments is proposed at $800,000. There are a couple of potential projects that would need assistance with infrastructure improvements. The same with single family housing infrastructure in unincorporated areas. So there are two different types of housing. One would be rental properties, the other would be single family residences that would be owner occupied, and that is $289,000 is the proposed funding. There's a county-wide mural project. You may remember a similar project maybe 8 or 10 years ago that put Hoagie Carmichael on the old Reedmore building, and it put the horse Single G in Cambridge. So that is really a kind of a tourism project, and the expectation or the recommendation would be there'd be some funding from the tourism board, but the lion's share of that would come from $75,000 from county ARPA, and this would be done as kind of a festival kind of thing over a 2-week or so period, and every community that's participating would have the opportunity to nominate buildings that might be the location for these murals. I'm told that this is a real draw for places that have a significant number of murals, and that it would aid in the tourism side. The next project is public Wi-Fi expansion in the Parks and Main Street corridors that we're proposing to upgrade through the Creating Places program. That would put the equipment in these locations in the small towns. $14,440 is the estimate we have to do that. Then the town would have to opt in or out, and if they opt in, then they would have to pay the monthly cost of having the internet available for that location. This would cover the cost of the equipment that they would need. Blight elimination was again a significant issue that came up in multiple committees. The Quality of Place Committee, the Healthcare or Health and Wellness Committee, and the Economic Vitality Committee. The proposal is that there be $780,000 dedicated to this project in the county. The city is also would recommend, or we're recommending that they fund a program within the city limits of Richmond. This would be $390,000 from the county edit and $390,000 from consolidated edit for a total of $780,000. And then $100,000 would be proposed to be dedicated, and this you guys have already approved and the commissioners have approved, the grant administration for the community development block grant. That is recommendation there for the community development block grant is that those dollars would be spent on 3 projects, one in the city of Richmond, one in Dublin, and one in Milton, for that total of $1 million of CDBG funding. The actual recommendation is that we spend $1,181,000 on those 3 projects, and that the additional $181,000 would come out of county ARPA funds. So those are the recommendations for how the county would expend those dollars. I feel like the other communities should be, deciding when and how they share that information, but I wanted to bring you all up to speed. And as I go down this list, then I want to share with you where the committee, the core team is proposing to spend other county dollars that are not specifically county projects. So those would be in these areas. Within the city of Richmond, $10,000 as part of that quality of place program with that would be in the park, in Glen Miller Park, with a playground renovation. $1 million in the Gorge Park in the city of Richmond. This will probably be one of the more controversial things that the committee is recommending, but this and I'm not an expert in tourism by any stretch of the imagination, but I am on the board this year representing the commissioners, and this project is widely believed to be the most significant attraction project as an amenity and as a way to attract talent and to retain talent that is already here. There's a feeling that students at IU East and Ivy Tech and Earlham would be drawn to the kind of things that would be done in the gorge. If you go down there now, it's hard to see where the river is. So opening that up so that the water is kind of front and center, the key to the Gorge Park is a big part of that. There's already $1 million being spent this year that is not part of this funding. That would take out the what's been referred to as the Weir Dam, WEIR. It's kind of a repetition because Weir, I believe, actually means dam in German. So it's the dam. But it's gonna come out this summer. That will improve the flow of the river through that area, as I understand it. And there's a whole book that the Parks Department has on improvements to the gorge. Overall, it's a $10 million project. This would get us to about 2.625 million in projects for this year and next year. $1 million is proposed from the county edit, and then 625,000 of that would be CDBG, and another $1 million that the city has already committed for this year out of that $10 million program. And it really seems like it has some wow factor. So we will, of course, have more information as we get closer, and you all need to make some decisions on how these dollars are invested, but it appears to me to be a significant project that would really do us some good. The other project in collaboration is the Family Resource Center. This is the one project that again, it was identified in I think 3 of the committees, but the Health and Wellness Committee really focused on this. This project is actually funded, the operations, the staffing is funded through the state, through an organization called Firefly. And the mission of the organization is to help keep families together, whether they're suffering from mental illness issues or, teenager parent issues or drug issues, whatever the case may be. They are consultants, and they'll refer people in many instances, but then provide some services as well. I'll provide you with a website that shows models of where they have other centers throughout the state. There's 4 or 5 of them that are funded by the state. And that would be a total of $700,000, including the $275,000 from the state, $200,000 from the county, and $225,000 from the city. It would be located in the city, but one of the things they're requesting is a vehicle so that they could take their services out into the county. So it is a county-wide activity is their intention. Couple of other collaborative projects. There has been a lot of conversation about animal welfare. There is not at this point a clearly defined project that has been identified and vetted. There are different groups working on projects, but the committee felt that the best approach for the moment would be to hire a nationally recognized consultant group to come in and review all of what is currently happening in Wayne County, what the needs are, and then particularly, I think from my perspective at least, to work with the police agencies to determine who do animal control, what are animal control's needs, and how can all of those things be taken into account, what kind of project could and should come out of that study and that information. And so that is projected, and this is a guesstimate at this point, but that the county and city would share in funding at $75,000 apiece, which would be a top end of $150,000 for the study. I honestly don't know. I don't expect it will cost that much, but we just ran out of time, and we we need to get this moving forward. So that's the recommendation there. In the small towns, there are, in addition to the $10,000 for creating places, there are some other recommendations for commitments. Remember, the small towns total ARPA funds ranged from as little as $30,000 up to about $350,000. I think Cambridge is the largest of the towns, and theirs was 360-ish thousand for total. And so 30% of that is what they needed to commit for help. The county has significantly more than that, as you're aware. Remember that these funds were awarded based on population, and so we benefited, the county got money based on the population of the entire county, and then the town or city got funds based on the population of their community. So for the people that live within those towns, you could look at that as you know, they counted twice. And so I think it makes some sense, and the committee strongly supports the county seriously considering investing additional resources in those small towns. So here's the breakdown on the recommendation. And I won't go over the $10,000. Actually, virtually all of them are looking at things for their kids. So playground modification, expansion, renovation, up to $100,000 project in each of those communities. For East Germantown, they're also looking at a sidewalk project, and they want to commit their 100% of their ARPA funds and are requesting $10,000 of additional funding from the county for a total of $62,550. They're also looking at a necessary sewer infrastructure project, and they have $21,000 in their own, I'll call it the sewer office funds, $21,000, and they're asking us to match that with $21,000. So that would be a total request from the county for $41,000. Economy has two projects, the playground update, and then most of you are familiar with the old gymnasium in Economy. It's actually the park and the gymnasium are owned by the township. The gymnasium has become kind of a center point community center for folks in that area, and it has some water infiltration issues, so they are requesting $9,103 that they would combine with $10,897 of their ARPA funds and $5,000 from the township, and to address the water infiltration into the basement of the gymnasium. Spring Grove, the only project that they're proposing is an upgrade to their website, and since that is not an eligible project for creating places, but it seemed logical to the committee that if we were contributing $10,000 to each of the other small towns, that we would do the same towards the Spring Grove website upgrade. That's the only project that they proposed. Dublin, $10,000 for their playground. They have a sidewalk replacement project that's $114,000. They're committing the entirety of their 30% commitment to help, $50,787. They're asking the county for $64,013 for that. And then their water infrastructure project is the one that they're requesting under CDBG. And that is the one that we just kind of picked at random out of the three for the additional $181,500. So it could be any of the three, but the recommendation is that those three projects to do them the way they need to be done would take $1,181,500, not just the 1 million. So that's the recommendation there. Then Milton, two additional projects. The sidewalk replacement is a $100,000 project. They're requesting $39,000 from the county, and they will put $31,000 from their help dollars, and $30,000 from their local road and street fund to make the total. And then their stormwater upgrade is their CDBG project. It's a total of $321,000. $260,000 would come from CDBG under this recommendation, and then they have $61,000 in their stormwater fund that they would contribute. And then finally, Cambridge City, the playground update, and then they're looking at developing a performance venue, hold concerts and community gatherings in Crites Park. And that has actually it's in two phases, but phase one is the only one that we're recommending funding. It's a total project of $300,000. They would commit $138,000 from their ARPA commitment. They're asking for $100,000 from the county, and then they would raise $62,000 from private sources there to complete phase one, which should allow them to do some concerts and host some events in the park. Then they also put forward the Gateway Industrial Park water improvement. That estimate that they submitted to us was $8,467,000. That is way beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, and so the committee recommends that not be funded at all unless or until there's discussion between the county and Cambridge City about exactly what are you planning to do when, can you break off a smaller piece, and so all the issues surrounding the Gateway water project, so we'll be talking about that much more, I'm sure. So if you total all those up, the recommendation is that the county would invest $5,869,856 in all of those projects that were highlighted, plus the $500,000 from Wayne County Edit as those were spelled out. So $6.3-ish million in total, but that 5.8, as you know, is roughly half of the total that we have in ARPA funds. We have already committed about 2.3 million. So that leaves us about, 4.5 million, maybe 5 million. I'll get you the exact numbers, that are currently uncommitted and obviously unspent, that we need to start talking about, what are the other projects that the county wants to see completed with those ARPA funds. That's my presentation. We will get you more information as it becomes available. Each of the communities has looked at vetting these projects in tandem with the people from the core team. So keep in mind that Beth Fields, City Beth Fields is a member of the core team as well as County Beth Fields as the community coordinator. But Valerie Schaefer is a member of the core team. Melissa Vance from the Chamber is a member of the core team. Mary Walker from Tourism is a member of the core team. Acacia St. John from the Wayne County Foundation is a member. So they're the key players in most of these projects are well represented on that core team. It was lengthy conversations. Some of these projects met with complete unanimity. Others were somewhat contentious, and there was not a unanimous position. But this, as a recommendation, the conglomeration, all of these projects that I've just shared with you, was a unanimous recommendation from the core team that they be funded in those amounts for those projects. So again, it'll come back to you sometime in July with much more information about the projects, how they work, the plan for implementation, and so on, and information about whether the projects that are being recommended have actually been vetted by Okra and approved for them to continue in the process. So some of them may not be. I think probably all of them will pass that test, but that's something only Okra will be able to answer as we move it forward. So I want to thank everybody who's been involved, and I know all of you have participated in some way, but the core team in particular has, and the committees have spent a significant number of hours on listening to the people of Wayne County and pulling together all this information and then creating projects out of what in some cases were pretty vague ideas. And I think it's a good plan to move forward, so we'll keep you posted. And with that, I'll yield the balance of my time. How much time do I have left?
You went way over.
Did I? Oh, good.
You're way over. Does anybody have any questions before we move on?
Now, what about the awarding of the $1 million from the health plan? How is that to be treated? The $1 million.
The Okra
Yeah.
funding, the CDBG funding, I listed
Those
those
were the
three
CDBG.
Okay,
projects.
so that,
Those are the
so the core
those are the
committee
CDBG.
recommended that with it.
Correct.
So when you
Correct.
said CDBG, that was the distribution of the $1 million?
Community Development
Okay.
Block Grant, yeah,
Okay.
sorry,
I wasn't doing a running
slipped into
total on
jargon there.
CDBG, okay.
But yeah, that
When you
was
said
it.
CDBG, that totals $1 million.
Well,
Okay.
it actually totals $1,181,000.
Oh, okay.
And so the core team recommends that additional 181 comes out of county funds to fund those three projects.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, next up, we need the approval of our May 17th workshop minutes.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Commissioners,
Move for approval.
Second.
all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and we just have one item of business to talk about the approval of the purchase of the HVAC system that failed this last week. We just need to formally vote on spending that money from our one-time fund, so I just need a motion for that.
And remember the 110,000 was for all three units.
Yes.
We were gonna replace them anyway,
We had
It's just kinda
100, I
spend
think, originally in our,
but originally was the estimate from a
estimate, but
couple of
it's-
years ago.
yeah, it's 110 for all three, so if that's okay, we need a motion.
Motion to approve spending the 110,000 on the air conditioning systems.
Second.
And we'll take
At
that
the
from
First Bank Coolman Center.
Yes.
Thank you.
from our one-time money, project money. And we have a second by Gary. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none.
I almost voted on that, so I
That's okay.
started to.
Does anybody have anything else from their committees to report? If not, our regular meeting will be July 5th. We are coming into budget season. Our all-day budget session will be July 19th. Make sure you have that marked on your calendars.
If
Have you
we have,
decided what time we're starting on the 19th?
We will let Tony decide. He's not here tonight, but we'll let him say.
I think he said 8, but
I said 8. I think he might have said 9, so we'll
He
we'll
might
let you
have.
know for sure the exact time.
if we have issues that we need to get in front of you on the 19th, can we have a workshop
Yeah, we usually
As part of
have
that.
workshop at the end of the
usually?
day whenever
So,
we're done,
We still
so.
plan to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
So we have a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second.
motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can do it.
No, I'm handing it to you. There you go. Good
We're
job.
out.